Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Edison and Hayfield's Junior Night, where we're going to get lots of great advice from college admissions folks from around the East Coast. We appreciate all of them being here with us tonight, and we appreciate all of you being here with us tonight. We're going to start out by letting our panelists introduce themselves to you. Kayla, we'll start with you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kayla St. Clair, and I serve as Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Virginia Tech. I oversee our visitor experience, our data processing, and our PR, or Public Relations Unit. And my territory in Virginia actually includes the greater Charlottesville area, but I am on loan for you all tonight. I will be the honorary representative for your high schools. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Luis Portillo. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions with the University of Delaware. I'm what's considered regional, so I live in the area in which I recruit, and I've been recruiting Northern Virginia now for pretty much my entire 9-year career in admissions. Happy to be here.
Yep. And hello, my name is Alfonso Garrett. I currently serve as Director of Admissions and Recruitment at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa Yakubowski. I'm the Director of Admissions at the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg.
Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia Dela Cruz. I am a counselor at Northern Virginia Community College. I've been in higher ed for about crazy long time. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and definitely am open to any questions.
Thank you, panelists. One quick note to students and parents. If you have questions during the program, you'll notice down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a Q&A and a chat. Put your questions that you might have in that Q&A, or if you want to send a message to one person and one person alone, you can use that chat box. We have Hayfield Counselors and Edison Counselors, plus all of these lovely college folks. And so between all of us, we will try to make sure that your questions are answered as we go along. We are putting the agenda in the Q&A chat right now so that you'll be able to look at it and see the different topics that we'll be covering throughout the evening. And with that, Kayla, take it away.
All right, so I get to start off talking about something that's pretty important when it comes to your college search, which is actually starting it and really narrowing down and honing in on what it is that you want. And so when we think about a college search, I know that there might be some different feelings that come up for folks. And one of those feelings might be that it's a little overwhelming when you think about how many great institutions there are out there, how many institutions that are in Virginia alone. You know, it becomes a real challenge to narrow down the scope of what you're looking for. So some key factors that you may want to consider from the very beginning are things like the size of the institution. So you're able to think about, you know, do I want that, you know, large institution with that large atmosphere, you know, big game days or, you know, things like that? Or do I want to have that more one-on-one attention that a smaller private school or a more regional institution may offer me? So that's something to consider. Your location as well. And so I know that we probably have some different, you know, stereotypes out there of what different college locations might be like. I know for Virginia Tech, for example, we are considered to be a rural campus. And so we do have horses and cows on our campus. They're not like free roam, but we do have, you know, that ag side. And so our location, it is something for students to consider and see if it's something that they, you know, want to embrace as part of their college search process. Looking for the major that you're interested in is also something that really can help narrow down the scope of your search, because not every institution is going to have every single major. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have everything figured out right now and that what you're interested in right now is what you're going to graduate with a degree in and pursue later in your career. Chances are that it's going to change, and that's okay. But you want to set yourself up that, the institution that you're going to is one that's going to really, support you academically and be a good fit academically for you. You'll also want to think about activities and facilities on their campuses. So, do you have a really big interest in running, for instance? Is it really important that there's a great indoor track? Is it important that there are running trails throughout? Or are you really into the music scene and it's really important that, they're bringing different acts to campus, or that there's local venues that you can go to experience live music? Those are all things that you want to think about when it comes to the activities at an institution. You are going to hear a lot about just how many things you can be involved in. For instance, at Virginia Tech, we have over 900 clubs and organizations. But when you think about our student body size, which is about 30,000 students, that fits. It kind of tracks along with how many students that we have. But you're going to be able to find a lot of different opportunities no matter where you're at. You'll also want to think about the facilities. So things like the gyms, the health center, dining halls. You want to make sure that you're going to everything inside the classroom is really important, but everything outside the classroom is really important as well, because how you take care of yourself outside the classroom will impact how you're doing inside the classroom. And resources as well. So if you know that it's really important for you to have emotional support or mental health services on campus, you'll want to check those things out before, you commit to an institution. So those are all things that you can kind of just explore at this stage, check out some websites, ask those questions when you're on a campus tour or when you're doing something virtually, and make sure that you're getting the answers that you need, because this is your process. And I know I may have some family members out there that are feeling a little sweaty because I haven't mentioned this yet, but something that's important to consider as well is the cost of an institution. So you will want to make sure that you're thinking about the cost, thinking about how much, debt that you're willing to go into, possibly, when it comes to any loans that you might need to take out. Are you considering only in-state public options where you would receive in-state tuition? Or are you considering that school, out in California or Oregon or wherever it might be, where you would be an out-of-state student? You want to make sure that cost is a conversation that you're having early with your family or whoever may be financing your education. And if you're the one financing it, that's okay too. You can have those conversations with the institutions that you're applying to. So you do want to make sure, this really goes hand in hand with finding your fit, is knowing yourself. As a junior, you've probably explored a little bit, what experiences are fulfilling for you, which classes you enjoy, which ones you might not like so much. And those are all things that, can be informing finding your fit and, starting that college search at this point. You'll also want to think about if schools are test optional or test blind. I know that the pandemic has severely affected access to tests and your ability to take them. And so many institutions have pivoted to respond to that, and they are test optional for a lot of institutions that you may be considering. So you can look into resources. There are some online databases that will let you know whether or not a school is test optional or test blind. Test optional means that if you're providing that information, we're not going to look at it. So if you've already sent your test scores to us or something like that, but you select on your application that you don't want them considered, we don't look at them. And so you have that option on the application to say, yes, I want my test scores reviewed, or no, I do not. And we will use that however you answer it. It's not a trick. It's not meant to, be a game or anything like that. It really should be, do Do you feel that your scores supplement your application? Yes or no? Being test blind would mean that even if you submitted scores, even if you want them considered, we're not going to be taking a look at them. So just make sure that you're aware of that. And we really want to think about broadening the definition of what a good school is. I know that when you're having conversations with your family and your friends, you're probably always talking about the same schools, or in general, the same kind of schools keep coming up. But there are so many institutions out there that could be a really great fit. So you want to make sure that you're kind of looking outside the box. Remember that this is your journey and your journey alone. What your family member did may not be what you do, and that's okay. And you don't want to dismiss institutions based off of a stigma either. So I know that things like technical programs or career programs or even community college, those can all be stigmatized, unfortunately, but they are really great pathways to a career or pathways to transferring to a four-year institution. That's how my education to Virginia Tech started. I was waitlisted out of high school, went to my local community college, and transferred to Virginia Tech. And so, I've done it, I've experienced it, and it was the best choice for me. And it could be the best choice for you too. So just remember, it's all about you, what works for you, and make sure that you're really owning this process from the very beginning to the very end. Now, that's all that I have for this now, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Luis.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And 100% with you. It's all about what's the right fit for that individual student, as opposed to what's going on around you and that outside noise, right? So I was asked today to come onto our Zoom and discuss what you should be doing now as a junior. Kayla mentioned starting your list and compiling your list and figuring out what schools you want to apply to. Let me give you a piece of advice with that as well. When you're looking at these schools that you're applying to, make sure that every school on that list is a school you are excited to attend. I know there's some stigmatized titles out there as reach schools and safety schools and stuff like that. If it's an accredited institution here in the United States, it's a great institution for you. And make sure that if you're applying to 7 schools, all 7 schools you're excited to attend and thrilled to be admitted. Okay. What you should be doing now, though, I know we're probably a little bit past senior scheduling. If not, we're right there. Actually, no, we're definitely past senior scheduling. If I know Fairfax County schedules the way I do, I would say this: what you're going to want to do is make sure that your transcript is looking good where you are now, right? It doesn't have to be pristine. Making sure that your college list is matching your academic profile. When looking at these colleges, the first thing that we're going to see is going to be your transcript and everything that you've done until this day. And so making sure that your curriculum and the rigor behind it is where it needs to be specifically for that school is going to be extremely vital in your application process. So I have students all the time that are saying, well, they want nursing, and they're not challenging themselves with a curriculum in senior year of a science like an anatomy or even a chemistry, or in the other case, engineering. Understanding that engineering at whatever school that offers an engineering program is going to be heavy in calculus, and if you're skipping calculus to take AP Stat, that's going to raise a red flag for readers. So making sure that your curriculum and the rigor of the curriculum is right where it needs to be. The other thing is making sure that you are getting yourself organized. What you're going to be noticing is that senior year is going to sneak up on you. It's not really going to sneak up on you, but it's going to come back and bite you real quick. And what I mean by that is you start school late August, and by mid September, your first early action or early decision deadline is a month away, meaning you have to submit all your transcript requests to your registrar's office and have them send them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Ms. Ferguson and Ms. Cunningham can attest to this, your counselor's requests that you put in your request 3 weeks early. I'm telling you to keep their lives sane and do it 4 weeks earlier, only because it allows you an opportunity to have that extra cushion and to think about both of your schools in 4 weeks. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Both of your high schools in Hayfield and Edison, your senior class, a lot of you will be applying to colleges, and that means a lot of requests going through your registrar. Don't think of it as just the one request for that one school. Imagine the other amount of students that are applying to that school as well. So getting organized. Deadlines. Deadlines do not sneak up on you. You sneak up on them. Those deadlines haven't changed. Those deadlines won't change. And so what I mean by that is organizing yourself either through an Excel sheet or one of those calendars that's somewhere where everyone can see it. Parents, this is where you can assist. This is what you should be doing now, is being kind of a support system and not the driver behind it. I attest it going back to when your student was learning to drive, how you sat in the passenger seat, maybe with the foot on the brake, the imaginary brake, but you still sat there and supported them as they learned. And this is a portion of where your student is going to have to take the wheel, disregard the pun, but literally drive their own application process. And being organized is going to be key to it. When looking at testing, because I know some schools like Delaware hasn't announced that we're going test optional yet. Hopefully it is coming soon. I will say this, you will need to make sure that you are comfortable taking a test. I will never tell anyone to take a test if they're not comfortable with it, and that's completely fine. There are countless numbers of institutions that are test optionals, like Kayla said, making sure that you are finding the right school for you when it comes to testing as well. And then last but not least is start doing some summer tours, whether they be virtual, whether they be signing up for some type of student panel. I know most institutions have turned a lot of their content to a virtual world to provide you with more information, literally at the tip of your fingertips within a keyboard strikes, right? So making sure that that is where you are now. As the summer continues, I always recommend my students to keep up with some type of academic work, whether it be Khan Academy or ACT test prep, not so much to prep for the testing, but also to keep your mind sharp as the summer goes along. Because the biggest misconception is that you get to senior year, you apply early action or early decision, you get in somewhere, and then you're pretty much done. In reality, no, we all on the college side have had to, in the past, rescind an offer of admission because the students started slacking senior year. So don't let senioritis get you when you get to that point. The last thing I think you should be doing now as a student, especially at Fairfax County, when it comes to academics, is going to be making sure that your graduation requirements meet admissions requirements. And I say this only because I know Fairfax County is one of those great counties where they allow you to take a world language in 7th and 8th grade and then have it count towards graduation. There are institutions out there that do not count a world language in the 4 year, that a world language that is not in the 4 years of high school as part of the admissions requirement. So I would highly attest or highly suggest that you go and take a look at the schools that you're interested in and making sure that their requirements are matching your graduation requirements, because sometimes they don't match, and then that's a hiccup that we could solve now that you all are juniors and before that senior year starts, and we can figure out a plan of action for you. What you should be doing now on a personal level, kind of what Kayla said, is really making sure that you're picking schools based on your liking. If they're not paying for it or praying for you, their opinion really shouldn't matter in your college decision application process. And then using your resources. You both, at both high schools, at Edison and at Hayfield, you have some phenomenal resources in the counseling staff, and then my two favorites in Mollis and Amy in the college and career centers that are always there, ready and willing to assist. And my hope is that we will be able to see each other in person this upcoming fall. Signing up for those college visits is going to be a big thing, whether they're virtual or not. I will go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Mr. Garrett. And thank you all so much for having me. Fonzo, your sound isn't working.
Alrighty, looks like my mic looks green now. Hopefully you all can hear me. So I'm sorry about the little snafu, but I guess in COVID land and world, we're all kind of adjusting and going through with everything. But I was just saying it's 2 hard acts to follow, with Kayla and Luis there, but great information. And I'm gonna try to do my justice to kind of ride that wave of excitement and interest. So hopefully ever at this point, take a breather. A lot of great information shared. We got quite a bit more to go through. But my topic is kind of give you a little insight on how us on the college side make admissions decisions. And I guess I've mentioned I'm currently serving as director of admissions at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. But prior to this, I spent time in a few other places: small private liberal arts, large state universities, urban schools, etc., and now the historically Black university. And I can tell you, folks, everywhere I've gone, admissions has always had a slight different twist to it, but ultimately going towards the same goal. University wants to enroll a certain number of students who have the capabilities of being successful at their institution and adding different attributes and characteristics to the overall campus community. It just depends on the institution on how those different things weigh into the process. So it's the challenge for you all on your side is trying to take the information that Elise and Kayla gave you, narrowing down your list, picking the appropriate schools, all that great stuff. But when it's actually time to apply and look at your documents information, each of these institutions are going to take a slightly different spin. But information is pretty much the same that we're going to ask from you all. So for instance, the most important, of course, is your high school record, the high school transcript. That is like our quick down dirty summary of the courses you've taken, how well you've performed, how grades are calculated, the whole 9 yards, right? And in addition to that, most high schools also provide us with a school profile. And that profile is typically 1 to 2 pages that gives us the quick factual information about your school so that I know the different, intricacies of your particular institution. So for instance, some high schools offer AP classes, some don't, some have IB, some have dual enrollment, some have honors, advanced, you name it. So again, so obviously you're coming from your particular high school, but on the admission side, I'm going to pick on Kayla. I think she's beating us right now. Virginia Tech had over 42,000 applications. So you can imagine the variety of high schools they're interacting with. So having that critical information and comparing them accurately across the board is pretty important to us. But again, like Luis was mentioning, setting yourself up to have that strong curriculum, because that's where we're looking for. So the balancing act, like I mentioned previously, you have to be able to be successful at our institution. And we know what success looks like because we're also aware of the resources and support structures that we have in place at our respective institutions. In addition, colleges have different levels of space as well as levels of competitiveness in their process. So there is oftentimes a level of competition at several different universities. So, so that's something to be aware of as well. So sometimes when you don't get that yes answer right away, it's not because you can't be successful. It might be due to the competition. But on the flip side, it may also be that the institution has different sets of priorities. But again, so academic transcript, like Luis was mentioning, we essentially go year by year, course by course to see what academic criteria you're taking. Here in the state of, or I guess there in the state of Virginia, you have your standard curriculum choices, advanced studies curriculum, etc. But Luis also mentioned graduation criteria for high school is not necessarily the same thing that makes you eligible or competitive for college admissions. So each institution is going to look based off their curriculum sets to see if you're taking a curriculum, a level of rigor and curriculum that's going to make you successful in their institution. Some institutions are kind of check the box. They'll look at your cumulative grade point average, see if you had your course, your grade, your class minimums, 4 years of English, for instance, and it's kind of check the box, process. Other institutions are going to do a much deeper dive and compare the level of rigor. If your school offers calculus, is it regular calculus, honors calculus, AP calculus, dual enrollment calculus, etc. So that in some cases may get to that level of stratification and information, but it all stays the same. We're looking at that high school transcript to get a good idea of your overall academic record. And especially this year in COVID, where many universities are waiving or employing test optional policies, that's becoming a much more critical part of our process, is getting a good idea of how courses selection and how grades are being assigned to you all. And in addition, especially now, is the personal statement, or that infamous college essay. Now, this is one aspect of the application that varies pretty widely on the college admissions world. So you always want to check with the institution to which you're applying to verify what of their essay or personal statement, if they have one. Institutions like mine at UMES, we don't require a personal statement or essay. However, if you want to provide one to add additional context, we'll accept it. So it doesn't hurt you not to have it. It could help you to have it, right? But on the flip side, some universities will flat out say, no, we don't want any essay. Don't send it to us. While others may be looking at essays for, grammatical, correctness. It may be like more of like a writing sample to see, your writing capabilities. Other institutions are looking at information for things known as non-cognitive variables, seeing, kind of taking a step back further to see kind of how you think, how you tick, and respond to certain circumstances, situations. So it's not a one size fits all approach when it comes to essays and personal statements, but universities are pretty straightforward with what is the purpose of their essay. Now, I know that oftentimes you're going to work on, like, you're going to have a great essay crafted. You're going to swap out university names and send it to multiple of us. That's fine too. I would never, some admissions people wouldn't tell you this, but I don't care. That's perfectly fine. But of course, make sure you change the name in the application. I don't want to hear about how you want to go to Virginia State University at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, for instance. However, if their essay requirements and the things that they're asking for are in line to what we value in an essay, then it's perfectly fine to share that. But on the flip side, if you know that, I'm not sure, like, so the University of Delaware, they may want a writing sample. I don't know this, Luis, I'm making it up. Like, they might want a writing sample, but Virginia Tech doesn't. In that case, you wouldn't want to share essays between universities. But ultimately, each college or institution is going to tell you what is the purpose of that essay and how they're going to evaluate it. And I've been to certain places where it's been checked the box, the student submitted an essay, the application is complete, keep it moving. I've been to other places where we really went down like almost with a magnifying glass to see exactly if the student's addressing the question that we're presenting in the essay prompt. And again, I keep mentioning the COVID world we live in, right? So as the institutions drop the SAT requirement, they're looking. Many of us were looking for other additional, metrics to assure students could be successful at our institutions. So those essays are great qualitative data points, but there are ways to rate them and grade them so they are a quantitative metric to help prove student success on our side. And we keep dancing around the SAT, ACT being optional for many institutions. I'm pretty sure it's the vast majority for the past year were test optional or waiving, but there are still some folks out there in different states, for instance, as a whole state, they may require the SAT or ACT. Now, I guess on a personal note, I would say if you're doing your research, in advance, especially like you folks are doing now, kind of narrowing down your list and picking that solid list, like Luis said, all the colleges on your list, is this a place that I really would go to? Is this a place that I really would send my son, daughter, or my child to? Correct? If you can say yes to that and they require the SAT, then I would encourage exploring taking the SAT or ACT. But for instance, you might come down with a list. They're not all great institutions like you would definitely go to. If they don't require the SAT, then personally, I would not recommend taking it. But again, everything comes with a caveat because the more options you have, obviously, more possibilities there are. So there may be, for instance, we may not need it for our admissions process, but we might need it for our scholarship process. So it does put a little bit more work when crafting your college list to verify what are the actual requirements for each institution. But for institutions that do use SAT, ACT, they're using those with their own internal metrics. Again, it's designed around those ideas in place of can students be successful and are they competitive given the competitiveness of their respective applicant pools. And then last but not least, another key area is essentially what I like to call everything you do besides go to school and go home and sleep every day, right? What are you doing outside of your academic space? There's clubs, sports, extracurricular, all those extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, family obligations, you name it. Things you do to fill your time and your days and your weeks that may not come across on a transcript, that may not be on your personal statement or your essay. We are often also interested in knowing that aspect of you as well. And so some institutions are, again, like I said, those checkbox, GPA plus test score equals admission. They're not necessarily too interested in that because their criteria is based solely on the academic components. But many times you'll see nowadays we're looking for those other areas of your the things we say that make you well-rounded, so to speak. We're looking for those other pieces. Well, no, part of that, there is a lot of anxiety around it. Like, did I do the right activities? Was I involved enough? I had a part-time job, so I couldn't be on the football team, things of that nature. Everyone's individual, everyone's unique, everyone has a different lived experience. So I think to myself again, what do I do besides go home and sleep every day after school? Or I guess after logging on to school, in this case this year. So if you can think of what you're involved in, is there any type of value behind that? So for instance, I remember a couple of years ago, I had one mother was like, almost in tears, like, my son does nothing. All he does is play video games all day, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, well, like, there's this big thing called esports that's going nowadays. We might want him here to be a part of that club organization. He might help start another thing. So that also can show, another way a student can engage in our campus culture and experience at the university. So to her, she was thinking he's wasting time. But to me, I'm like, is he dedicated to it? Is he really, clocking hours? And if you really follow video games, there's a pretty big world out there, and rankings and structures there in place. Also encountered a student at one point in time where they were afraid that they didn't have club activities and things because they had to babysit their younger brother, get them off the bus, things like that. And it's like, no, tell us that as well, because that is something that's valuable. I mean, being responsible for human life. I mean, it doesn't get more serious than that, right? So that's something, again, leadership potential, community service, etc. That all ties in together as well. So when you think of these different elements to the application, again, these are typically the big ones, right? Your high school transcripts, your grades, rigor, performance, etc. Your personal statements, the essay, SAT or ACT test scores if they're required. You know, and then of course the things you do again. And I always say that phrase: everything you do beside us on the university side, would love to know about those aspects about you. Each of those elements, but these are the things. And again, I can't reemphasize, it's a balancing act for us, to be quite honest. It's art and science. Can the students be
I think Alfonso's having some internet connections.
Am I still?
No, we can hear you now. You were breaking up quite a
I'm
bit.
sorry. But yeah, all right. Thanks, folks. So I was talking about my secondary topic.
Alfonso, we can't hear you again.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. That's so embarrassing. Historically Black colleges and universities.
You know what, Alfonso, why don't you figure out your technical issues, and we'll jump on to Melissa, and then we'll come back and see if your connection is any stronger.
And I hope that my connection holds to the joys of Zoom at home with your family when they're all on the Wi-Fi at the same time. So I know you guys have all become experts on Blackboard and have navigated this too. But I'm going to talk a little bit about two topics as well tonight. So I know we'll circle back on HBCUs with Alfonso in just a little bit. I'm going to follow up on his how colleges make admissions decisions, with a piece on how you can manage the process and how you can make your final decision. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the liberal arts and sciences and why I think it's great. I mean, I'm a little partial myself. So let's start with managing the process and you making your final decision. So I'm going to talk about a few things that we haven't quite talked about yet, starting with the importance of deadlines in the application and financial aid process. Are they important? Yes, wholeheartedly. You need to pay attention to them. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline of the process kind of going into your senior year. First of all, you need to know that there are several different pretty standard application processes. You're going to start to get familiar with them. Early decision is one, early action, regular decision, and rolling admission are the four big categories. Now, there are slight variations even within them. So for example, you might have early decision 1 and 2 as variations, but I encourage you, if you have questions, to ask your counselors and ask the Career Center about them. They can help you clarify and figure out what's going to be best for you. But big picture wise, early decision, is essentially means that you have decided where you would like to go. You have a number one choice out there. This means that you've also done the bulk of your research and your search in your junior year going into the summer before your senior year, so that you have narrowed it down. Because early decision is binding. If you are admitted under an early decision process, you are essentially agreeing to attend that institution. Now, the great thing about this process is that it is wrapped up pretty early because, like the name says, it's early decision. So application dates typically are between October and November. Your admission decision comes to you typically in December. So before you've even finished the fall semester, you have an idea that you've been admitted and you can make a commitment. Your deposit to that institution is usually due in January, confirming that you plan to enroll, but we expect you to enroll under early decision. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat for this. This isn't necessarily the right process for most students. Number one, most students are not ready to make that decision that early in the time frame and timeline. Some students are really making decisions about where they're going to apply into their winter break. So that's not necessarily a good fit if you are rushing it to kind of game the system. The other thing is that you have high financial need, or you expect to use a great deal of financial aid. You don't often know that at the point of early decision. You may have an idea of what, hey, my dog just joined us. You may have an idea of what an estimated package might look like. However, it's not an official package. So keep that in mind. Again, talk to your counselors about what the right process is for you. If you've narrowed it down, early decision may be a great fit, but it may not. Early action is something that I can encourage everyone to consider. It means that you are acting early, but not committing to school early. This keeps your options open. Essentially, you apply in early fall, usually again in October to November timeframe, and your decision comes to you a little bit earlier. Often this happens in January, so it's a little bit later than early decision, but you actually still have until May 1st to let us know whether you'll attend. You can consider all of your options for several months. You can receive your financial aid, you can visit. I encourage you to consider this opportunity because while it's not binding, you are maximizing your consideration for all special programs and even special financial aid, maybe a full ride scholarship competition or an honors program or a particular academic program like a nursing program. So to take full advantage of that full consideration, you should consider applying under an early action process, non-binding, but certainly an early timeline. Most colleges are going to have a regular decision filing date. Typically, this could be anywhere from January 1st through February 1st or even March 1st, depending on the institution. Decisions usually come to you depending on when their filing date is, no later than April 1st, but it might even be sooner than that. And then again, you have until May 1st to make a decision. So it's a more condensed timeline. So just keep that in mind. Again, you might want to make sure that you're anticipating and visiting because you really only have about a month to make your decision in many cases between April 1 and May 1. And then the final option is rolling. And so just like it sounds, as your application becomes complete with an admissions office, they are making decisions and notifying you. Often they'll give you a 2-week turnaround time when your application becomes complete, and ultimately are accepting deposits as you're ready to make them. So keep that in mind. Again, if you have questions about individual processes and what might be best for you, it's great to have a conversation with your counselor or career center specialist. FAFSA filing dates are extremely critical. And so you should know what they are for each of the institutions. They may be a little bit different. Many of us have February 1 FAFSA filing dates, but you can actually start your FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, which is the process under which all of us are looking at creating a need-based financial aid package for you. That opens October 1st of your senior year. So you can actually apply for your financial aid at the same time that you are completing your applications for admission. A couple of little helpful points here though. I encourage you to use your social security number on your application for admission if you are planning to use need-based financial aid, because that is the first point that they match financial aid packaging and the information from the Department of Education to your actual application at the institution. The other thing is to not wait until the filing date to actually complete it, because there are a couple of steps that require several days to kind of verify. And one of those is to establish and verify your federal student aid ID as part of that process. So that is allowing you to sign off on things electronically. So don't wait. You might miss out if you file late, and you should do it at the same time as your application. I want to talk a little bit about appropriate parent involvement. As Louise said earlier, parents should be supportive, but not the driver of this process. Students, you really need to own this. But parents, there are some clear pieces and roles that you should take in this process. Number one, the FAFSA process is really critical for you to be involved with. Just because the federal government puts the responsibility of paying for your child's education, or at least understanding what you can contribute to it, squarely on your shoulders. So please be participative in the FAFSA. Yes, watch Paying for College and Scholarship 101. So definitely get some good information there. Your other big role, one of your other big roles, I should say, there are more than just one or two, is to be an encourager and really kind of keep an eye on stress levels for your student. We know that this process is already crazy and overwhelming at different times. There are a lot of unknowns. It seems at times that there's not a whole lot of transparency. However, if you throw COVID on that and just kind of the stress and adjustments that our students have had to deal with in this past year, and what even the fall looks like for your student as a senior in this process, there's still some unknowns. So keep an appropriate kind of check on them, check in with them regularly, understand how stressed they are about this process, and know that we are behind your students too. So encourage them, but keep them in check and keep them balanced as best as you can. There is a real critical role that you play, and that is making sure that important conversations about this process are ongoing conversations, and that not every conversation you have with your student is about the college admission process. So I encourage you to dedicate some time, maybe an hour on Sunday afternoon to spend talking about where your student might be in the process, talk about what you are planning to contribute, have very open conversations about that, so that they understand how that might impact their choices and their search process. I also do encourage you to keep it open and have conversations. Don't eliminate schools just based on price tags alone. Students rarely pay that billable cost that they are sending you or showing you on their website. Financial aid really often does come into play, and there are often scholarships. But your role is not to complete the application for admission, nor is it to write an essay for your students. So keep that in mind too. Quick question about getting waitlisted. Fun question. Now what do you do if you come back and get a decision that says it's not a no, but it may not be a right now kind of a thing? First, I want to stress that the admission decision is not a judgment on you as a personal individual student. Okay. There are a lot of factors at work that sometimes you don't know about. We heard a little bit about priorities. I think Luis may have said something, Alfonso may have said something about institutional priorities. Things like enrollment in new programs or limited spaces in others or athletics are all examples of how the admissions decision can be impacted in ways beyond simply looking at a high school transcript and a student's commitment and preparation outside of the classroom too. So just be understanding of that and know that that's part of what we're trying to do as we make decisions in our worlds too. If you are interested in that school and continuing to be in consideration, make sure that you respond, but understand that it does keep you in a little bit more limbo. Schools handle their waitlist processes differently, so you should ask, do you have to respond? Do they rank candidates on the waitlist? What additional information is helpful? They may want some things, but not others. And remember, institutional priorities can come into play here as well. But this is also where demonstration of your interest in that school is key. You should tell them why you are a good fit for that institution. So keep that in mind too. And again, you should choose a backup. You don't ever want to put all your eggs in one basket. You heard Luis mention, finding schools where you think they all are a good fit. And that really is kind of what we believe in. Find 5 schools that are all first choices. And so that makes the decision making even harder at the end. But ultimately know that for waitlist, we don't always know a decision before May 1. So you may have to make a deposit at another institution that you would also equally love to attend and be very successful and happy and find your joy. But that school that you were waitlisted may call you after May 1 and say, we've got a space. Do you want to come? At that point, it's on you. You get to decide whether you give up the deposit somewhere else and follow and go to that waitlist school, or whether you stick with your original plan. So there is more than one way to achieve your goals. So just keep that in mind. And there are more than one school. There's more than one school out there that is going to be a great fit for you. So keep that in mind too. Finally, how do you make your final decision? Hopefully, again, you've done a good search and you feel that all of your schools that you've been admitted to are good fits. Certainly, it may come down to financial aid packages. Again, you want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and look at your out-of-pocket costs in the bottom line. Reputation and outcomes may come into that. So looking at what their graduates are doing, and certainly the success of those individuals. I encourage you really to dig into feeling and fit. I think that's one of the challenges of COVID, is that you have been more limited in getting out and visiting and stepping foot on campuses. So I encourage you to do that as much as you feel comfortable, even starting this summer. You know, certainly connect virtually if you are not yet comfortable to set foot on campus. But that feeling and fit can kind of be confirmed the more you connect and engage with individuals, whether that is virtually or whether that is in person, with students, with faculty, with your admission counselor, with your friends that you know there. And just know that sometimes you get it wrong. We all get it wrong. Sometimes there are opportunities where you have an opportunity to transfer to a school. You heard Kayla mention about her pathway coming through the community college. So we all have transfer opportunities when something doesn't work out with the school that you were initially really keen on. So definitely keep that in mind too. And my final piece of advice about your admission process is that you don't leave us hanging. Communicate. If you've decided you're not interested in a school anymore, it is okay to tell us. We might be a little hurt, especially if we've had real great conversations with you, but we also appreciate understanding and you finding a good fit at another institution. We really want what's best for you. Now, I do want to talk just briefly about liberal arts and sciences, because Mary Washington actually is a liberal arts and sciences institution. But let's talk a little bit about liberal education, because I think a lot of students don't quite understand what that means. And so ultimately, it's not new. Ancient Romans were schooled in grammar and rhetoric and logic, and were expected to participate in civic affairs, in the forum, even public debates and service in the military. But basically, liberal education is a broad as well as deep dive into a major area of study. So it includes core classical subjects like history and humanities, and as well as science and math. It's really where we hope that you'll have those aha moments where things all sort of kind of come together, and you know, your poli-sci class is starting to overlap with your psychology course or even your science class. Liberal arts and STEM are more specific, or more scientific fields, I should say, are not necessarily mutually exclusive either. So it's, you know, public and private liberal arts institutions are certainly dedicated to this mission, but even public flagship and land grant institutions have missions that usually include some undergraduate degree opportunities in liberal arts disciplines, along with their pre-professional and professional studies, such as agriculture and business and education, architecture, even engineering. So even our two-year colleges, our community colleges, provide liberal education. So you also should know that liberal arts institutions are adding more practical majors like nursing and cybersecurity. And humanities programs are adding things that are more technology focused, like a digital requirement, to best prepare students for what lies ahead. But I think one of the key benefits of liberal arts education is that you don't always have to know what you exactly want to do when you're starting college. You can discover your passions, you can explore additional interests, and ultimately you get to engage in the world that's changing around you. So it's an approach to learning that empowers individuals and prepares them to deal with the complexity and diversity and change, and nothing embodies that more than our current situation with the pandemic. So just recently, actually, probably in the past week, the Association of American Colleges and Universities, which admittedly is a little bit biased because they're all about higher education, but they just released a study about what employers are really looking for in new employees and new hires out of, for their industry. So business and industry leaders responded to this survey. And ultimately, what came of it, what the results were, is that employers have confidence in higher education and ultimately the value of the college degree. And they do really believe that liberal arts or liberal education and preparation are preferred over more specific job training. They really do provide knowledge and skills that are important for career success, not just doing a very specific job. 92% of the employers that responded said it's important that students have been exposed to a wide variety of academic topics and disciplines. Consistently top-ranked skills are critical thinking and analysis, complex problem solving, teamwork and collaboration, and communication through writing and speaking, which are all skills that are developed in a good liberal education. Ultimately, 4 in 5 employers would also are more likely to consider hiring recent graduates, college graduates, if they had completed an active or applied experience in college. So internships or apprenticeships are top of the list, followed by working in community settings with diverse partners within their communities. But practical application of what you're learning in the classroom really does matter to them. Ultimately, college should get you more than just one job. It should prepare you to succeed in multiple careers. Studies now show that current college grads will likely change careers, a dozen times in their lives. I, on the other hand, have had one career. I've been in higher education my entire time, but you guys are likely to change 10 to 14 times. If you only learned in college how to do one thing well, navigating those changes might be a little bit tough for you. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported a couple of things. Every year, more than 1/3 of the entire US labor force changes jobs. 50% of workers have been with their companies less than 5 years, so they're changing companies even. And every year, more than 30 million Americans are working in jobs that did not exist in the previous quarter. So jobs, we don't even know what jobs will exist 10 years from now. The pandemic really has only increased, and I think really called attention to the fact that we need adaptability and problem solving. We need civic consciousness and even perseverance. So that really, I think, has shown more than anything the need for that flexibility and adaptability that comes from a liberal education. And certainly with a liberal arts background, you'll be able to be flexible, adaptable, and well equipped to handle just about any career change and shifts in the job market. So just remember, real world problems rarely ever have textbook solutions. So one of the best ways that you can prepare yourself is with a liberal arts education. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand it maybe back over to Alfonso.
Yes, thank you. Alfonso, we're ready.
All righty, I'm here.
Great.
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm sorry, folks, I had to connect on my phone because apparently my internet connection out here on the shore wasn't doing too well. But anyways, I was wrapping things up to saying I wanted to talk a few moments about historically Black colleges and universities, or also known as HBCUs. So first and foremost, an HBCU, or historically Black college or university, is an institution that was founded prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 with an explicit mission to educate students that identify as Black and African American. These could be a combination of community colleges, private universities, public state institutions, research-intensive universities, single-sex education, etc. Currently, there's just over 100 HBCUs in the country, down from around 157 back when we first got our designations. But it's very important to know that these institutions are all around us and some pretty great places to study. But having a unique mission, again, being founded with that time frame and given the way the political climate and things were prior to the Civil Rights Act, throughout the United States, especially in the southern states, Black and African American students were not allowed to attend college and university. And in fact, the first Black student to attend a college or historically white college university in the former Confederate states throughout the South was Irvin Pedrew III. He went to Virginia Tech back in 1915, 53, I believe. Kayla might be able to correct me. So it wasn't too long ago, but prior to that, there was no other institution other than an HBCU in the South that would have provide education opportunities. And there were a handful in the northeastern states. But HBCUs as a collective are typically medium to small in size, teaching oriented, even our research counterparts. But you can study a wide variety of majors and programs throughout our different institutions. But we're really credited with knowing that we are being very student-centered because we were founded to help educate the underserved, essentially. So throughout history and our foundings, we've always adapted to the needs of our student bodies and environments in ways that some of the other institutions may not have been able to. And so it's uniquely as a collective, we're the only college and universities in the United States that never turned anyone away based off race, religion, gender, etc. So that's pretty amazing. And in fact, back in World War II, HBCUs actually hired and educated as well as hired, Holocaust survivors as in those fleeing Germany or what have you. So real important aspects of our history. But nowadays, again, I mentioned just over 100 of us. Most of our institutions are minority serving institutions, so majority of our population do identify as Black and African American and other races, ethnicities. However, there are some institutions that are predominantly white institutions now. So, for example, West Virginia State University is a HBCU, but the population is majority white. So it's not an institution type for any given demographic. It's just an open environment to all people, which most of us, all of us universities are nowadays. But that key founding, we were able to establish different sets of culture and events and things back in those days. So for instance, in your area, around the fall, if you're listening to the radio, watching TV, you'll probably hear about Howard University's homecoming. So in regards to HBCUs, Howard University, they call it, the HU, because there's Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. So they get to fight over who's the real HU. And they'll always say, I'm the real HU. No, you're the real HU. But so like homecoming events, camaraderie, celebrations, things of that nature are very prideful parts of our culture and our organizations. We also get different types of funding sources. So for instance, University of Maryland Eastern Shore is a land grant institution. In Virginia, that will be Virginia State University is the HBCU land grant institution. So the federal government does provide us different funding and things, and as it relates to STEM majors and programs, particularly agricultural, engineering, technology related areas as well. We do have land grants and things of that nature and extra resources around those areas. But I know that I messed up my time, so I just wanted to give you a few tidbits of that and get us back on track with our schedule. But definitely here for questions and things of that nature towards the end if you would like to address them and send them my way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we are ready for Ms. Dela Cruz.
Yes, so I'm not going to turn on my video. You don't really need to see me talking, but I do have a PowerPoint. So hopefully you guys can all see this. But today I'm going to be talking about the community college option. So at this point, some of you may already be tuning out because you're like, no, don't really care about the community college. I want to get into the university. I totally get it. That's kind of how I was too when I was in high school. I thought that the community college was like 13th grade and, no, I want to go to a university and get that experience, but you never know, right? So at this point, I encourage everybody to continue gathering as much information, whether, Nova is your number one choice. And a lot of times people do come because it is their local community college. They may not even know what they want to do. So, just taking some general classes in the beginning will help them kind of figure out what the end, what university would be ideal for them. Also, some students do choose to go to Nova, because it's cheaper, right? And so I have this PowerPoint so that you guys can kind of see the overall gist of what Nova has to offer. In terms of, money, I mean, there's a simple comparison between Nova and George Mason, and that's current, tuition rates. And at Nova, you don't necessarily have to go full-time, right? Like we get students who work full-time, therefore they go to school part-time. And the reality for them is that, they may be there at Nova longer than 2 years, because typically you hear students going to Nova for 2 years and then they transfer. But some students will be at Nova longer than 2 years, and that's okay, right? Because their reality may be they have to work. So we do have a lot of flexibility at Nova. You can start at any time. You can go part-time, full-time. There are different lengths of sessions. You know, a full semester is 15 weeks. Sometimes we have 5 weeks, 7 weeks, 10 weeks. And then, like I said, Nova has 6 different campuses. There's Alexandria, Annandale, Loudoun, Manassas, Woodbridge, and the medical campus. The medical campus houses all of our allied health programs, and usually you have to get accepted first into that program before you go to that campus. But for the most part, any of our campuses have all, you know, all the class offerings, right? Except for maybe certain programs such as vet tech, that would be more so at the Loudoun campus. Now, when, you know, students think of Nova, they think of probably going there and then transferring. So in terms of program options, you know, if you're there at Nova and you want to complete an associate's degree, there are 2 different types of associate's degrees, and you have to make sure you choose the right one based on what your goal is. Do you want to transfer and get a bachelor's degree eventually? Well, then you have to make sure you select a transferable associate's degree, which you will note, you'll see there, it's noted by 2 letters, either an AA or AS, Associate of Arts or Associate in Science. Now, if you think about the career and you realize that your career doesn't require a bachelor's degree, it may just require maybe an associate's degree, then we do have applied associate's degree that are available. And those applied degrees do not transfer. So that's why we say be careful with what you choose, because you want to make sure that what you complete suits your overall big plan. And of course, at Nova, we do have certificates. So depending on the career that you're trying to get to, you know, a career or a job may specify certain certifications that you need to complete before even applying for a job. So certifications can be completed while you're at Nova, or maybe you go to Nova first, do the degree, you know, the associate's degree, and then you transfer. And then once you're at the university, if you realize, you know, I still need to take some classes for my certification, I'm going to go to Nova while I'm at the university, right? Because in terms of, you know, the type, the mode of instruction, I mean, we have in person if you're going to be in town, or we also have online. So if you're in another city, you can definitely take Nova classes while you're in another city via online classes. And then of course, another question that we get is like, well, how do you transfer, right? And there's different ways. And the 2 main ones is transferring regular or competitive. And so you can transfer after a year or after 2 years with or without the degree. But if you want to transfer with a guaranteed admission agreement, then you definitely have to abide by all the, you know, the rules or the requirements that are on the agreement. And so basically you do have to complete a transferable associate's degree. And then you also have to maintain a specific GPA that the university you know, wants. So if you were going to compare, let's say UVA, right? UVA, I think, wants a 3.4, you know, Nova GPA versus let's say the local university, George Mason, they want a 2.85. So these are the kind of things that students should know in the beginning so that they understand, you know, how hard should they work while they're at Nova, like how good of grades should they be receiving, so then they can make that, you know, that transfer. Being at Nova for 2 years doesn't mean you automatically transfer after 2 years. There's a lot of academic planning that is required, and Nova does have, you know, student services. We do have advisors. We do have people who will help you throughout this entire process. Now, at the bottom, as you guys can see, that's just the general process for if you wanted to get started at Nova. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to decide now if that's the path that you're going to take. Like I said, some people say, yes, that is my #1 choice. Some people say, you know, Nova is my backup, right? If I don't get into my school of choice, then yeah, I'll start at Nova, and then eventually I'll get to my dream school. So the timeline that you see there is it can fluctuate. You know, if anything, I would encourage students to apply for sure by January. So then you can start to figure out, you know, what would be your English and math placement. And then probably March and April of your senior year, you want to start looking into what should I take? Like, what classes should I take? And how do I actually sign up for classes? Because that's a big difference between high school and college, right? College, you are now responsible for registering for your classes. Like, counselors don't do it for you. So you have to, you know, incorporate time to do that. And then just so you know, if you want to start taking classes in the fall, registration does start in May. We tell students try to sign up as, you know, soon as you can, because some classes do fill up, and you want to allow for time to figure out the whole tuition payment in July. And then of course, August is when classes start. So yeah, my information is up at the top. You can email me anytime if you guys have any general questions, but that's about it in terms of the college option. I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We had a lot of questions in our Q&A chat, but before Is there anything else you would like to ask in the question and answer section, or of a particular panelist? We had a great question. If one of the panelists want to answer about, and I think you did, about GPA and SAT. So thank you for answering that.
Can I chime in about that? I totally forgot to highlight that.
Please.
At Nova, I know everybody else kind of talked about, SATs, ACTs, and Nova does not require SATs or ACTs. We don't even look at your GPA, to be honest. Like, you can go to a community college as long as you have graduated from high school and or at least you're 18 years old. So the application itself for Nova, it takes probably 15, 20 minutes of your time. Once you complete the application, you're pretty much accepted. You will get your Nova ID number, you'll get a username so you can log into your account, but it's pretty easy. And so, there's no fret, there's no wondering, is Nova gonna accept me? Just fill out the application and you're in. Once you're in, then obviously there's certain steps that you need to take, right? To then prepare for the next step, like placement, advising, registration, and so forth. So just know that for those of you who, again, if it's your first choice, it's an easy process. If it's like your backup plan, you can definitely start the process, let's say in May, once you realize, I didn't get into my schools, I think I'm just going to go down to Nova.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dela Cruz. In the chat, I have put a great resource that all students have access to here in Fairfax County, and it's Naviance. If your student hasn't shown you Naviance yet, there's the link right there, and you can go ahead and do that with them tonight or at your leisure. You can also talk to your college and career specialist about the benefits of Naviance. It's a great database. It has all sorts of information in it. It helps students take assessments about what might interest them. It's got a portion of looking for schools and having a great filter there, so you can narrow things down based on your students' interest and different things. So that would be a great resource, Naviance. If you haven't been to Naviance yet, I think you will love it when you see it. We love to direct students there. And I think that you will find it a great resource. Just checking here if there is anything else here in the question and answer. It looks like we're clear of things right now, but this has been amazing. I hope that you all.
Alice,
Yes.
Melissa had one question that she was going to answer live for us.
Awesome. Oh, good. Thank you.
I know that Cynthia responded in the Q&A about just the pathway to becoming a doctor, and so ultimately, just know, I think this is one of the things that I like to share with students, that most students follow a pre-med kind of pre-professional program at the undergraduate level. And so you don't necessarily major in pre-med, you major in other things, and it could be biology, it could be chemistry or biochemistry or biomedical, or it could be English. But as long as you are following and building your academic curriculum and tackling those strong courses in the math and science, that is going to be key, that you do well. There's also other things that you'll do while you're in your undergraduate, your 4-year bachelor's degree outside of the classroom, where sort of shadowing doctors or being a scribe in the emergency room or running EMT calls may be all part of your practical experience and preparation. So I just wanted to share that with you. Additionally, if you're thinking that you want to be a pre-med kind of student in college, then ultimately you need to make sure that you are lining yourself up correctly in high school with your academics. So that means really challenging yourself into your senior year with a very strong math and science curriculum. So I would encourage you to do that too. Talk to your counselor. Thanks.
This looks like an interesting question for the panel, if anyone wants to answer live. What is most likely a possibility for a college to not accept you? Anyone want to take that one?
I mean, I'm still on camera, so I can jump in, and if anybody else has any other thoughts. I mean, I think here's the deal. Like we're all different, and just like you are all different, we're all different, and we're trying to find a good fit. And so you heard me say that there's not just one college or university out there that is magically the best one for you. There are going to be lots that are going to meet your needs and the type of interest and have a great experience for you. Your job in the search process is to find those schools. And so ultimately, you may have some schools that you look at your academic program and preparation and the interest that you've had, and kind of look at the schools, and maybe it's a little bit of a reach. Maybe it's not quite aligned, but you know that going in. The other thing about that is that you have total control over that part of the process. You control where you apply. And so you should be kind of lining up those pieces through your search process to make sure that they are good fit institutions for you. You don't want to be over your head as soon as you get there, and you don't want to be under challenged when you get there too. So Alfonso, you came on camera, so I feel like you want to chime in too. Maybe, there you go.
No, I agree with all of that information. I was hopping in because I saw more questions coming because I was getting ready to help with something.
Thank you. Awesome. We have a couple of questions. Ms. Dela Cruz, this is a great question if you have a second. Someone asked about colleges in Virginia that have a special transfer program with Nova, like Advance. Could you talk a moment about the Guaranteed Admission Program?
Yeah, sure. So the Guaranteed Admission Program, it's called GAA, Guaranteed Admission Agreement. So NOVA has agreements with multiple universities in the state of Virginia. I don't know if there's some I haven't checked outside of Virginia, but a lot of them are in Virginia. And so you go onto this website, and I can put it in the chat box. And on that website, if you go to the very right and click agreement, it's a multi-page document that basically lists what you need to do at NOVA in order to then get that guarantee at the university. And it's a great opportunity, like I said, where you can start at NOVA, transfer to your dream school that you couldn't get to right away, like straight from high school, because maybe you didn't do as well as you had wanted in high school. So going to NOVA is like your second chance, right? Because your high school transcript does not follow you into college. Like you basically start off fresh. So you could be maybe like a B or C average student in high school, and then all of a sudden you turn things around and you're like a straight A student. So yes, there is a program like Advance. Advance is strictly between NOVA and George Mason. And so GAA, Guaranteed Admission Agreement, is for all the other schools. And so I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat box if you guys wanted to shop around to see who has a GAA with NOVA.
All right, so I'm going to tap in to help address some questions as well. So I see there's a question in regards to academic challenges this year, schools giving out pass-fail grading, and how are those grades being considered versus traditional letter grades? So this is one of our favorite responses in the world of admissions, is that it really depends. So what we're going to do is we're going to look, like I mentioned earlier, how we're going to look at your transcript year by year, course by course. So we'll notice that if pass-fail grading is existing, the schools, in most cases, and I can't think of Edison or Hayfield off the top of my head, will let us know that for this class, pass-fail has been an option for certain students, or what criteria does it take to get pass-fail? Because some school districts are not allowing that across the board. Some are doing it for specific classes. So I would say, given the context of your high school and the rules around why pass-fail is an option, that's going to be a factor in our process. Now, it's a multitude of things. We're looking at your course rigors. Having like I always say, it's getting straight A's in all the easy classes is not the same thing as taking a full load of the most advanced classes, right? So the same thing with pass-fail. So we're going to look at the level of rigor, the courses you take in the pass-fail, and those other elements in your application. Because very few of us are only going to look at just purely your GPA or purely the grades. We're taking all these different characteristics you're hearing us say into consideration in our process. So again, like I mentioned, transcripts, grades, if test scores are a factor, those extracurricular activity involvement, essays, etc. So it's not a real cookie cutter answer, unfortunately, but just know that it's dependent upon how your school is awarding pass-fail grades, and we'll see how that context works out in your school system.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would just add there too, just remember that we are partners with your school systems in this. You know, when changes like this are made, they are kind of, you know, they're sent to us. We know about them. We can see it on the school profile. And so your applications are reviewed within that context. So don't think that like we're not aware of it and we're not going to understand what's happening. You know, we know about the policy changes through Fairfax County schools, and we're going to be aware of that when reviewing your applications. So just make sure that you know that and that, you know, we are partners with your schools when it comes to things like this, and we're trying to support you in the pivots and the concessions that are made due to COVID-19, just like your schools are. So.
Thank you. That is so true. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, please take a look at the Naviance database that you can log into as a parent or as a student. The website I will put again in the chat. And we hope you enjoyed this. Thank you again for being here. I want to thank all of our panelists. It was so great and so educational. I always learn something new when I am a part of these events. So thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for helping with organizing this. And we hope you all have a great night. Thank you so much.